Hello, welcome to the celebration of life service for my father, Edward Andreas. I'm Michael Andreas, his eldest son, for those of you if you don't happen to know me. Anyway, before I get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We're doing this because of the pandemic, and getting together entails a little bit of risk, and some people have to travel, which makes it even more risky. And Zoom, if you've joined with Zoom and you're seeing a screen that looks like the Brady Bunch, a bunch of tiny windows, there's a control in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You can switch between that view, which is called gallery view, and speaker view. So anyway, I'm going to begin by reading the obituary, and then I'll have a few thoughts to share. So here it goes. Edward Henry Andreas, Ed or Eddie, passed away on August 2nd, 2020 at his home in Overland Park, Kansas. Edward was born on December 10, 1929 to John and Magdalene Andreas in Beatrice, Nebraska. He had two older sisters, Catherine and Elizabeth, and two older brothers, John and William, and later was joined by a younger brother, Paul. He grew up on the family farm in Beatrice and attended Bethel College in North Newton, Kansas. He was a conscientious objector and served in the 1W Alternative Service Program from 1952 to 1954 at hospitals in Pennsylvania and Kansas, after which he worked on the family farm in Beatrice, Nebraska. In 1964, he moved his family to the Kansas City area and worked as a welder. He retired in 1998 after 32 years at the Kansas City Star newspaper. Edward became a member of the Church of God in 1961 and served as librarian of the church tape library and also worked with the church sound system. Edward was mechanically inclined, maintaining his own vehicles and equipment, and performing many home repairs and improvements. Edward married Betty Nickel on October 17, 1952 in the Brudertal Mennonite Church near Hillsboro, Kansas. Together they had 5 children. Edward is survived by wife Betty of the home, son Michael of Olathe, Kansas, daughter Christine, married to Rex Jamerson of Merriam, Kansas, daughter Rebecca, former spouse John Wise of East Bend, North Carolina, son Mark of Overland Park, Kansas, and son Stephen of Carrollton, Texas. Edward had 4 grandsons and 3 great-grandchildren. He was preceded in death by his parents and all of his siblings. Okay, that concludes the reading of the obituary. So I had a few thoughts, a few memories of my own. As a child, I went to a one-room schoolhouse near the farm where we were living in Nebraska. And we had one teacher shared between all grades. I'm not sure that was a real impediment to my learning, although initially I did have difficulty with math. I just couldn't understand. You write these squiggly lines down and do this and that, and the answer comes out. What does it mean? So Dad brought out his slide rule and showed me how numbers fit together. And it was a different way of looking at numbers. So from that, I kind of developed my own system of doing math in my head. And I think today they call it the Common Core math, although sometimes they misapply it. I think Common Core math is intended to show the student that you can solve problems in multiple ways rather than just turning a crank and getting a number that you may not understand or don't have any feel for. Later on, when I was 14, I broke my arm, and it was late in the day and they could not set my bone until the next day. And so they wrapped my arm up, and I was in a good deal of pain, and I couldn't sleep that night. And Dad stayed with me and talked me through as I was suffering from that. As I got older, he helped me get my first car. I paid for it, but Dad helped a lot with it. Needed some mechanical repairs, and he helped with that. So I think it was good that I had to at least pay for the car. Dad never pushed a career choice on me. I ended up being an electrical engineer, and he was okay with that. It was basically whatever would interest me. Dad was a problem solver until the end, as he was in his last few months and weeks. He was suffering pain from his condition, and sometimes he wasn't thinking clearly. But if there were a project around the house, some little thing that needed to be fixed, I would talk to him for two reasons. One, he knew how to do it, and two, when he got his mind on something like that, he would kind of perk up, and it would take his mind off his problems, and that was another reason for doing that. So anyway, those are the memories that I had to share. So now we're going to go around and get some memories from some other people, and we'll start off with Christine, and let me explain how this works. Right now, everyone is muted, and what I'm going to do is we're going to ask Christine Andreas, so I'm going to ask to unmute, and you should see a little pop-up box that says to mute. Christine only would see that. If you click on that, then your little microphone symbol should remove the mute. So let me see if I can find Christine. Are you?
I think I'm unmuted already.
Yep, you're muted. So go ahead.
Okay. Hello. I've got a lot of memories with Dad, but I'll just pick a few. I remember back in grade school, new math was the way that they were teaching math. What?
It's called modern math.
Modern math, whatever. It was a new way of teaching math, and it was very difficult for me to figure out. I was trying to learn long division, and they were showing us that you had to diagram out each step along the way, how you resulted in each step. And it was just so confusing, and it didn't make any sense. So I asked Dad to help, and he looked at it and he said, there was a much simpler way of doing this. So he showed me the traditional way of doing long division. I'm like, wow, why can't they just tell us the simple way? It's just so much easier. But I still had to show the steps along the way so I could figure it out the traditional way, and then I could backtrack. Okay, this is the step to show each step along the way. So it was just weird, and I think that modern math was an experiment among many experiments that were a failure. So there were a lot of people who had trouble with math. And then Dad had a lot of interest in puzzles. He was always, he would be able to solve a puzzle very quickly. He liked three-dimensional puzzles, wire puzzles, wood puzzles, and he could figure those out in no time. And I was like, okay, that's beyond me. But I think he liked puzzles. Everything was something to solve, whether it be electrical, plumbing, carpentry, anything, car repairs. I can remember he did a lot of car repairs, and I can remember more than once he would work on a car all night and then go to work the next morning with no sleep. I mean, that's not really good for you, but he did it multiple times. And then when cars started becoming more computerized, he backed off on some of those because he wasn't ready for that. So as I said, he could do plumbing, electrical, carpentry, auto mechanics. He was very, very good at figuring things out and how they worked. And I have a lot of other memories, but I'll stick with those for now, allowing time for others. Rex, did you have a couple?
Yeah, I'd like to mention a couple of things. Of course, Ed was my father-in-law, and I can't remember the exact timing, but I think Christine and I were newly married, and I'd had a big battleship Oldsmobile. It was a Jetstar 88. And what was unusual about this particular car, and you'll understand why I'm bringing out this background in a second, it was, as the mechanics like to say, a 3 on the tree, meaning a 3-speed on the column, stick shift. It was one of only 47 made like it in the entire United States. The Buick Olds Pontiac dealership that I stopped in, they didn't even show parts for it. And so at some point, prior to that, the column had collapsed and I had put in a floor shift in the car. And so Ed came to me one day and said, would you like to restore that to the original? And I said, well, they don't make the part anymore. And of course, this is the response I've heard many times, I'll make the part. And so he pulled the column assembly out of a different year, Pontiac Catalina, that was an automatic, and did a lot of grinding, welding, and so forth. I didn't think it could be done. Of course, I didn't know him that well yet. And of course, a couple hours later, I had a car restored to the original specs, as they like to say. So I was pretty blown away by that, because I didn't grow up around anyone who could do those sorts of things. And then I just repeat a story. They had told me somewhere down the line that a piece of important equipment had broken down at the Kansas City Star. And of course, the presses were, some of them were quite old. And the main machinist was all up in arms because they said they don't make that part anymore. And he's telling the machinist this, okay? So he tells the machinist, I will make the part. And so that's just two memories I had of Ed's tremendous
Dad was very gifted.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rex. Okay, I'm going to mute you, and next we'll have Becky coming up. So let me find you here in the list of participants, and you should be able to unmute yourself now, Becky, and go ahead.
Okay. Does this excuse me, does this microphone work? Can you hear me? Oh, good. My new headset works. Okay. So I wrote 2 pages, but I'm going to make it shorter. So please bear with me while I read, and I'll just pick out things. Okay. So my dad taught me a lot of stuff, how to tell time, make change, and he helped me pass algebra, showed me how to budget and save money and file taxes. And he convinced me to practice driving a car and also to make the most of high school and also not turn down the chance to attend college. And let's see, other things he taught me, how to ride a bike, and he rode with me up and down the street, which meant a lot to me. And then a lot of times he packed up our bikes and the go-kart and took us to ride in the empty parking lot. And when it snowed, he packed the sled and took us to a nice hill. And every week he'd drive to go get milk and water and stuff. So I rode along, and I'd always ask him questions about what it was like on the farm and things like that. And then sometimes he'd go buy wheat, and I would ride along for a day on all our little adventures. And then when we took our family trips every year, he took us kids to do fun stuff like ride bumper cars and go-karts and take us to movies and ride horses and things like that. We'd go to parks and zoos and museums and gardens during the year. So we had a lot of good times. Sometimes we go to a drive-in movie, and he was always kind to John and the boys too, and he was always interested in what they liked to do growing up. And yeah, he took all of us to he and Mom took us to restaurants so the kids could eat, and then take them to playgrounds and parks so they could run around and burn off some energy. And anyway, several times over the years, he and Mom flew out and helped us move and helped us with emergency expenses several times, including a car. But they came out to see us a lot of times, and we enjoyed that so much. That was the highlight of our year, when Mom and Dad would come visit. And the kids enjoyed it too, and we would go on field trips with them, and they would take us out to eat, and that was a real treat too. And oh, another thing is, okay, this was very important to me, well, to all of us. When we were growing up, every morning Dad would read from the Bible, like a chapter from the Bible every morning. And I've always enjoyed being read to, and that really meant a lot when he'd read from the Bible. And then he'd say the blessing over our meals. And then we had those Bible story books, and some of the pictures were real scary, but he kind of explained them so I wouldn't be so scared. But there was one night when I had a nightmare and I was hollering help or something, and Dad came and prayed with me, and then I felt I wasn't afraid anymore. So anyway, so there's a whole lot of more stuff I could say, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. But I just so thankful to my dad for so many things. All right, I'll sign off now. I don't know how.
Okay, well, I'll mute you, Becky, and thank you for that. Okay, so next up we have Stephen, and let me find you here. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself. Wait.
Okay, all right, there we go. Well, it's nice to hear stories from others in my family. I have a few as well. Something I remember, one of my fond early memories was watching my dad do projects at home. And, you know, he wouldn't tell me directly, but as Mom gave me the backstory one time, she said Dad told her it was a Sunday, he had a lot to do on the car and he needed to concentrate and he didn't have time for a lot of questions from me. So Mom told me at breakfast that morning that, okay, you can go watch Dad, but you have to stand behind this line and keep your, fold your hands and don't ask him any questions, just watch. Okay, fine. So I would watch and crane my neck around so I could see what he was doing. And that was fine until I couldn't tell what he was doing. So I would just instinctively ask, well, what are you doing now? And then, well, why do you have to do it that way? All right, but then what does this part of the engine do? As I was gradually stepping past that line, I was supposed to stand behind so that I could point what I was talking about. Well, okay, well, how does that work? Well, why did they design it that way? On and on the questions would go till finally Dad would look at me and said, Stephen, If you keep asking me questions, I won't be able to get this done. So I would feel a little guilty, step back behind the line and stop asking questions, just watch. And that would last about 10 minutes till the next question would come. Dad enjoyed answering the questions. That didn't bother him at all. He enjoyed that. He just needed to get the car done that night so he could go to work the next morning. One other story he liked telling was a story about Becky, who just spoke. This might be what she alluded to when she said he helped her pass algebra. So Becky came to my dad with some complicated math homework. She was frustrated and she asked him to help. So when she showed it to him, he didn't know how to do it either. She was frustrated. She needed help. Well, but he didn't know how to do it either. But he looked at it for a minute and then he asked her a question. So, okay, so you're supposed to solve this question for X. All right, so how do you calculate this small part of the problem over here? She thought about it and said, well, they taught us to do this and this to it. Okay, so do that and see what you get. All right, now how do you calculate this small part of the problem over here? She thought about it and said, well, they taught us to do this and this to it. Okay, do that, see what you get. Now what about this part? Oh, well, for that, you see over here in the book, it says you have to do this other step. Okay, you do that. So after a few more iterations of these, Dad could see the wheels spinning in Becky's head. And the more she figured it out, the more positive she became about it. So in the end, she knew how to do it. And he taught her how to do it, and she was happy. Except he didn't teach her. He only asked questions. She figured it out herself. He helped her to figure out how to figure it out. So my dad didn't like to catch a fish for you. He liked to teach you how to fish so you could catch the fish for yourself next time. I think I'll hold for now. I have a few more stories. If there's time later, I'll fill in some more, but that's all I have for you for now.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. I'm going to. Okay, you're muted. Okay, next up, Mom wanted to
Michael, your
share
voice is quiet.
Pardon?
Your voice is still quiet now.
Okay. Oops.
That's better.
Okay. Okay, so Mom, go ahead and share your memory.
Okay. As you have just heard, he liked to solve problems. Some were complicated little problems. And one year, this was the year of the Rubik's Cube. Maybe you remember the picture from the slide viewing there. And we were giving and receiving gifts. And he opened his package, and here was the Rubik's Cube. And I don't know if you noticed in any of the pictures of him, he had all sorts of expressions. But in this one, when he saw the Rubik's Cube, he had a huge, happy smile. And so that winter, that was the order of business, and he figured the Rubik's Cube down to a T.
Okay. All right. So these are the planned memories, and we're going to open it up to someone else. And let me do a little housekeeping to explain how Zoom works. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a bar here, and in the middle of it is a participants tab. And if you click on it, then on the sidebar, you should have a sidebar open up to the right side. Okay, so to let me know, since everyone is muted, that you would like to speak, there's a raise hand symbol at the bottom. Okay, so when I recognize it, then I will ask you, or you should see the hand symbol next to your name in the participants list, and then I'll ask you to unmute. You'll click on the blue button, and then right now you should have a red slash through your microphone symbol there. The red slash should be removed, and then you can speak. So, is there anyone who would like to share a memory? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So, what I'm going to do is read one that I have on the side. You all can think about this, but I have a memory that I received by email from Dad's coworker. His name is Phil Schooley, and Phil still works at the Star, still 22 years after Dad retired. And as I understand it, he took over Dad's position when he retired, and Dad and Phil wanted to keep in touch. So I'll just read what he sent me in an email. It says, "Your father will be dearly missed by me. He was a very peculiar individual, very much like me. He was able to identify me right away and knew I would pick his brain for everything. He was very respected by the few who knew anything, but perplexed by everyone else who knew nothing. Right now I'm working on my deck. I'd hope that if your dad was looking at it, he would recognize his inspiration everywhere. I'm so blessed beyond any words can express that I crossed paths with your father. Not sure where I would be now without his influence. Hope this may give you comfort. Thank you, Phil." Okay, so let me look to see if anyone has raised a hand. I don't see any hands raised. So give me a minute to set up. I have, or while I'm setting up, I'll talk. There's a comment or a memory here we have from Dave Schnelly. When my dad inherited his farm from the father along with his siblings, Dave Schnelly was farming that section, and later on when they had a division and sold that property, my dad and my Aunt Elizabeth went in together with him to do some deals, and the house was sold back around, or the farm was sold somewhere around the year 2000, and then they had some deals, and I think it was unwound somewhere around 2010. But anyway, let me get this going here, and I have a pre-recorded memory for Dave. He doesn't have a computer, so we recorded him over the phone. So.
Well, this is David Schnelly, and I've worked with Eddie and Betty and the family for a long time, renting the farm. And Eddie, really my first meetings with Eddie was when the family was splitting up the farm, and his division of it, he didn't like any quarrels. And so the farm was divided up into 3 separate places, and Eddie and Elizabeth got 2, and the other parts of the family got 3, and they all got along real well, and I farmed the land, and then we come to the point of the farmstead was getting cleaned up because they had sold it, and it was a joy to work with Eddie, tearing down the old stone house, and Leon had his loader. We took down the barns and the money to take a 20-foot bend down Main Street, Beatrice, out west of the farm, and all the blocks and all those things that we just started in and kept working, and it would have been wonderful to have a video of that. He was tech savvy, so that would have been right down his alley. His curiosity, he would take anything apart, put it back together, and either it would work or he would fix it again. So that was a joy to me to work with him. He told me, safety was a thing when he was real small. There was lice with the chicken, and his dad put a little sprayer on his back to go in and spray it, the barn, and they put gas in it, so naturally, it caught on fire, and he was really burned. And that was a reflection of how he viewed safety. And it affected him because it made him pretty sick, and he got burned pretty bad. But he often talked about that and how we as fathers need to be careful and take care of the little ones. So when we were tearing stuff down, safety was really important to him. Some of the wonderful parts about him that I remember that were daily when we would talk, and he talked a lot to me when I was up north in the oil fields. Like, he would call and remind me and give me faith and keep me strong. The things that he cared the most about were probably some of the things that a lot of people wouldn't correlate him. He had tremendous courage. His strength was something that most people didn't understand about him. I never seen a man weak one time. And he gave a lot of it away. He loved to instruct. He was always teaching and trying to tell me how to run a computer, but we never got that down pat. I think that how we'll remember Eddie is kind, gentle, a friend, a mentor, a partner. But he was firm in his beliefs. We talked politics, religion, how to fix things. But he never, ever was unkind to anybody. And we talked business, and we had dealings with people buying the farm and people that were not respectful, and he was always kind. So I hope that as people think about who they can help in their own lives, like Eddie did, the example that he sent to me is how I'll try and carry on. But more than that, while he was here, he lived his life in an honorable fashion. He would always say about politics, can't fix them, Dave. We just got to pray and hope that everything gets fixed that way, because mankind is so stupid. I'd laugh and I'd say, Eddie, but can't we do anything? And he says, it's pretty far gone, Dave. The last times that we talked, why, it was matter of fact. He was just, like I say, a wonderful mentor. I'll miss him a whole bunch. But I really do think that the example that he has set forth, and I wish more people could have worked with him like I did. But I'll miss him a lot. His influence is always with me because of the farms and some of the things that we've got to look at. And it was sure a good life to live with him. But I thank the family for everything they've done for both of us. And it's been a good time. So thanks again. David Schinelli, and I've worked with Eddie and Betty and the family for.
Okay, so not really set up to produce ideally. So anyway, that's the end of that video. So that, again, that was Dave Schnelly. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to look through here to see if I see any hands raised. Let me go to gallery view. And if you had trouble figuring out how to do that, you could wave at the camera if you wanted to speak. So let's see. Still not seeing anybody. Okay, Stephen, did you have a few more words you wanted to say? Let me. For some reason, oops, I'm on the wrong, there. Okay, there. Stephen, did you, if you had anything more to say, you could unmute and go ahead.
Okay, there we are. I'm not used to raising my hand since I've been out of school for a few years. You have to prompt me a little more.
Well, we figured it out.
One of my fond memories, well, an off-recurring fond memory was working with my dad on projects. You saw if you saw the slideshow, you saw me working with my dad on a project in the shed in his backyard, and I believe Michael plans to show that slideshow again later if you didn't tune in time for that, so you'll be able to see that later. I've always sort of subconsciously evaluated myself based on, can I do a project with as good as my dad without needing to ask his help. But so often, even after I had my own house and I was living on my own for quite a while, I'd do a project and I'd get to the point of, well, I'm not sure how to do this. So I'd call my dad and he would immediately know what to do. Or sometimes I'd call him up and let him know that I'm working on a project and I'm doing this and I'm doing it this way and this way. And I was proud of myself for having been creative and figured it out how a good way to do it. And he said, well, Stephen, did you consider doing it this way? Oh, well, that would be a lot better and simpler, wouldn't it? So much for being proud of myself for figuring out how to do it. In that project in the slideshow, you see Dad and me working with a router in his shed. If I remember correctly, he had a wooden file cabinet, wooden drawer, and he wanted to hanging folders from it, but he needed to make the slots so that the hooks could hang on to the side of the shelf. So in a metal filing cabinet, there will be metal rails along the side, but this was wooden, so there weren't any rails. Couldn't put rails inside, had to make slots in the sides of the shelves, of the drawers rather themselves. If I said shelves, I meant to say drawers. Okay, so to make those slots, he needed to have a router to make a nice, smooth, straight slot. Well, what made me privately so happy was finally I had a tool that my dad didn't have, and so I was able to help him on a project. So that was a little validating. And then in this same vein, I'll read some from this. So I remember when I was a boy, and I was helping Dad work on an electrical project, and we had to take the cover off of an electrical outlet in our living room and dig into the wall. And no, this story does not involve electrocution. But actually this electrical project was something Dad was doing for me. I'm pretty sure this was the one about my beloved Radio Shack house intercom. So I remember every time Radio Shack would send out an ad, I would dig through it, look at the intercoms. Oh, I wanted to set up an intercom in our house so we could talk to each other from one room to another. And finally, this intercom was on sale, and I had finally saved up enough money to buy it. So I bought it. And now it was a weeknight after Dad got home from work, and we had eaten supper, and now Dad and I were installing it. So we had to run the lines, run a small wire from each intercom station to the other intercom station and through the wall, right? So we opened up the living room electrical outlet and dug into the wall so that we could grab the intercom wire that we were fishing up into the wall from the basement. Then we could run it to my bedroom, which was on the opposite side of the living room wall. So finally we snagged that intercom wire inside the wall and we pulled it up. We got past that hurdle. Now all we had to do was to finish running the intercom wire into my bedroom. It was only about 5 inches away, just on the other side of the wall, that's all. Never mind that there was lath and plaster and molding making up that wall. So, but only 5 inches away. Once we got the line run into my room, it would all be done working in my room. Okay, Dad, now let's run it from the wall into my room. Stephen, I'm tired, he said, sighing and resting his eyes. I was so disappointed. I didn't understand. We were on the home stretch. I wasn't tired. How could he be tired? Never mind that he started work every day at 7 a.m. Well, once I got to be an adult, I understood what it meant to be tired. Too bad energy is wasted on the young, and we don't have it so much when we're older when we need it. So I may have some more later, Michael, but I'll turn it back to whoever would like to make more comments.
Okay, let me switch back to gallery view in case someone needs to do a hand wave. Becky, did you want to say some more?
Yes, Becky's waving.
Okay, let me find you here.
Hello. I can't think of anything to say. Adam was trying to log on and he was having trouble. He was trying to figure out how to hear, and then he did that, and then but I couldn't see him, and I was trying to text him, how do you know, but anyway, he went away. So I'm sorry, I've been distracted.
Okay, so let me just double check here.
Sorry, that was off topic.
Oh, okay. We have Connie wants to speak here, so let's see. I'm going to see if you mute yourself, Becky, and okay. Connie, do you see an unmute box? Let's see, we're not, let's see, I don't see anyone unmuted. Let's see, I had a couple of hands up. I'm going to recognize Rex and Christine, and we'll figure this out. Okay, Christine?
Oh, yes, I had another memory from, this is going way back to when we lived on the farm in Nebraska. We had goats, sheep, and cows. And I can remember at one point we had an electrical line across part of the barnyard so that the animals could not go past it. And Mom and Dad both had said, do not touch that. And I'm like, well, what can happen? And so what I did was, okay, here's the line. I put my fingers just around it and did not touch it. I got shocked. And I was like, oh, I was crying. And it's like, we told you not to touch it. And then another time we had, it was a summer day and it was kind of warm, I'm pretty sure. It does get warm, pretty hot. And we had a big cow tank near the house and of course fenced in so that the cows couldn't join us in the lawn. And so I like to dabble my fingers in the cow tank and just feel the water. Well, Dad wanted to make sure that I didn't have any ideas about going swimming in the cow tank. So he dunked me. And I was very indignant. And I'm like, why did you dunk me? Well, I didn't want you to go getting drowned in there. And I said, well, I wasn't going to go in there. The cows have slime dripping from their faces, and I don't want to get in there with all that slimy water. But he couldn't read my mind. So I guess maybe if I had gotten a little older without having that lesson, I might have decided to try swimming, but I wasn't really ready for that. So I thought that was kind of funny looking back, but at the time it was not that funny. Rex has another memory.
Yeah, this is, I should say, picking on him maybe a little bit in a fun way. The same car that he helped restore for me to the original column shift, the clutch was going out on it, and so I guess I'll have to ask forgiveness to my mother-in-law for using up too much of his time in the past. But at any rate, he helped me put a clutch in this Oldsmobile, $500 Oldsmobile. And I said, I remember saying, don't you think we should have the flywheel turned down? Because anybody who knows about stick shift cars, you know, you get your flywheel that comes up against your pressure plate, I believe it is. And everything's got to interact there very smoothly. Well, of course, Christine's dad was, how should we say, famous for being frugal. And so, no, I think we can get by without having the flywheel turned down. Well, so we put everything back together, buttoned up the tranny and clutch assembly and all that. And I remember driving it out the driveway, and the whole car started shuddering when you would engage the clutch. And he felt a little bit embarrassed about that, but it was all in good fun. We eventually pulled it back apart and had to get the flywheel turned down. But anyway, just a little, how should you say, humorous memory of his frugal nature, which I did learn quite a bit from, actually.
Okay. I'm going to mute you, Christine and Rex. Connie, you had your hand raised. For some reason, I see you twice here in the participant list, and that may have something to do with whatever fumbles we had before. So if you had anything you wanted to say, let me switch over to gallery view. And if you wanted to speak, go ahead and wave at me. I see one video of you. Okay, let's see. I'm going to ask the second Connie to unmute. Do you see a pop-up box? Okay, I'm going to ask the other Connie to unmute. Okay. Okay. I see. There are actually two Connies here, and Connie, you're actually. I see you. The other Connie, I see you speaking, but you're still muted. So I'm going to ask again. I'm not sure which.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. I just wanted to say that I really did not have the opportunity to get to know Uncle Eddie until I was a little older, because you all moved to Kansas City when we were young. And so there were a few things that I do remember. There were some times like when you all had a picnic. I can remember going to a picnic in your backyard, and it was always a real pleasant experience coming and visiting Uncle Eddie and Aunt Betty. But I truly didn't get to know him until probably about the last 10 years or so. And I have been guardian for both my parents for about 10 years. And the one thing that I did truly appreciate is that Uncle Eddie was so kind and so compassionate, and he would listen to me and he would give me advice, and it was always heartfelt, and he was always just so very kind and compassionate, and that's what I remember of him, and truly appreciate who he was. He was incredibly generous and giving, and that will stay with me always. That's about all I have to say, but I just felt like he was a rather amazing person. He really, to me, personified what a Christian should be.
All right. Thank you, Connie. Okay. So we got that figured out. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Not seeing anyone else with their hand raised. Oh, wait, there we have something. Go ahead, Stephen. Unmute.
Okay, picking up on something that Rex mentioned about the frugal nature of my dad. Both of my parents, both mom and dad, were experts on saving money, and so I guess I got that gene from both of them. So that's a nice. Well, I found out later in life that different personality traits tend to want to save money, and other personality traits want to enjoy their money now, spend it now, and enjoy it now. So I never even knew that there was such a thing until I got older in life. I just thought that's how it was. One couple of stories at my dad's expense. He would always be focused on gas prices. As we would drive down the street, he would note the price of every gas station, and if it was higher than normal or lower than normal, it would invariably invoke a comment. Oh wow, that's down to 79.9. Well, eventually gas got, I guess, expensive in the part of town that we live, but we're on the southwest side of Kansas City, but my dad knew a gas station in North Kansas City that had great gas price, consistently great gas prices. So to save money, my dad would get gas cans. It's not the plastic kind that you see nowadays. This is the old-fashioned metal kind. I think they were jerry cans like you might see on the back of a World War II Jeep, but they were painted red. They weren't green. So anyways, Dad would load 4, 5, 6 of those, however many he had, in the back of the truck. I remember the sound of the chain clattering through the metal cans as he would secure them to the truck. Anyways, he would drive up to North Kansas City and fill up all of those gas cans and the truck, and he saved maybe 7 cents a gallon, maybe because of the large volume of gas that he bought. It may have saved a buck or two by the time he got back home. But having that gene myself, I know part of it, yes, is saving money, but part of it is the satisfaction of knowing that you save some money, or at least the satisfaction of feeling like you saved some money, whether you really did or not. One memory I have with my mom often when I was young is I would go help her go grocery shopping. Well, I don't know if it was so much help, but she took me along going grocery shopping. And Mom was expert. She knew what to buy, where, which brand was the best value, and this and that. And you know, we'll go to this store and get that item there because it's on sale, and we'll go to this store to use a coupon, and then we'll go to this other store where everything's cheap and we'll buy everything else there. So I was used to my mom being very efficient grocery shopping. Go get it, boom, 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 and we'd be done. The only time we stopped in the aisle was to pick something and we were just moving again. Well, I remember one time Mom needed something from the grocery store and she couldn't get it. So I went with my dad one evening to get that grocery item. And we got to this grocery store, and unfortunately there were 3 different brands of that item. Okay, well, to know which one to get, we need to figure out the cost per ounce of each item. All right, so Dad pulls out his calculator. So calculate, okay, write that down, how much per ounce. All right, how much per ounce of this one and how much per ounce of that one. And then we had it figured out, but then still the choice wasn't obvious because something else, maybe it was, well, Mom said she needed this much, but if we get this bigger size, then it's less per ounce. But do we want to get that bigger one? Because if we don't eat it all soon enough, it would spoil and that would waste money. And in the meantime, I'm saying, Dad, it costs $2. Let's get it and go. So that was one skill that my mom had that my dad had not had to develop. So it wasn't well, it was a funny experience even at the time, but I still rolled my eyes as a little kid.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephen. Next up, we have Dara. So unmute yourself and go ahead, please. There you are. Yeah, you're a little bit faint.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me well enough?
It's still a little bit faint.
Let me see if I can change my mic.
Okay, yeah, we still can't hear you. Let's see, I have Rex and Christine wanted to say something. So what I'll do is let you figure out the microphone. There's a, next to the microphone signal, there's an up arrow key, and you can test your mic and see if it's working. But I'm going to, okay, you are muted again. Hold on a second. Let me go to Rex and Christine. Unmute and go ahead.
Yeah. Hi there. I was just listening to Stephen's comments about going grocery shopping. Well, some years ago, Mom broke her ankle and she was laid up and couldn't go shopping. So Dad would have to go, and Mom had a pretty tight budget because, you know, being very thrifty, we have to have a budget for groceries and car payment. I mean, no car payments, but house payment and utilities. Anyway, Dad wasn't used to going shopping, and he was just blown away with the cost of everything. So he was always making comments about, I can't believe how much this costs or that costs. And it's like, well, when you don't go to the store but once every 5 years and look at things, or maybe 10, it's going to be a little shocking. And so, and inflation, you know, prices of food goes up, and he was just, that was not his cup of tea as far as knowing what was going on. So he was always explaining how things had gone up. So, okay, that's it for now.
Okay.
Anybody else?
All right, thank you. Yes, let's see if anyone else. Somehow we lost Dara here from the list. She may have had connection issues. Maybe that had something to do with her sound problem. So if anyone else would like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, we have Adam here, so you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have that many memories or that detailed, but just a few from whenever I was younger, or when they'd come visit us in North Carolina. They always had the best juice in the trunk of their car. It was like the highlight of my day. Another one is he, believe it or not, told me my first dad joke, which was knock knock, who's there, boo, and boo hoo. And I remember him laughing probably just as hard as I did, and was about 8 or 9 at the time. Taught me how to check oil when I was younger as well too. So those are always definitely some fond memories that I'll have. But yeah, that's all I have for now.
Okay, well, thank you, Adam. Okay, anyone else? Still don't have Dara back. Okay, so let me go to gallery view. I don't see anybody's hands waving. So, well, Connie's playing with her mic, so I don't see anybody. So I think at this point, let's see. I see someone did a chat. Let's see what they have. Hold on a second. Okay, old news. So, if no one else would like to speak, then what I'll do is wind up the meeting. But what I'm going to be doing is playing the slideshow that was played before the meeting. I'll be playing it again. Oh, Becky is waving. Hold on. Let me find you here. Okay. Go ahead and speak, Becky.
Hey, thank you. I just heard from our cousin Gina on Mom's side, Gina Minen, and she said she asked me to share for her that our dad always had a smile and a kind word. And I definitely agree with that.
Okay.
So he was always kind. All right, so I guess that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any more. Oh, okay, Dara's back. Okay, so.
We'll try this one more time.
Okay, that sounds better.
Okay. as I was listening to all of the memories, I have very similar ones to my sister Connie, in that I have fond memories of going over to your house when we were younger. And I remember a 3-generation picture that was taken when Grandma Andrews was still alive. And that was in at the picnic in your backyard. But I didn't really get to know your dad, Uncle Eddie, until I was involved with, excuse me, with my mom and him, and the trust and the farm. And I just always remember him being very kind and very willing to share his advice. And it was usually very well thought out, and we would talk with him, just, with family things, and I just have really fond memories of him. But I really didn't get to know him until probably around about 2000. But I do remember making trips up to Nebraska, and I would fly into Kansas City International Airport. And Uncle Eddie would, if we were going up together, he would stop by and pick me up at the airport, and we'd go up to Beatrice. And nobody has mentioned this yet, but I mean, he made me a little bit nervous when he was driving. But then he told me most of the trips we made after that, he said, I would really appreciate it if you would drive. And so I would drive his car up to Beatrice, and we would take care of the family business with Mom and Dave, and then we'd drive back together. And during the road trips, I found out a lot about him and your family, and why you decided to move to Kansas City, and it was really fond memories. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dara. Let's see. So mute there. Next up, we have whoops, things shuffled around. Linda. Unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Excuse me. So I'm slightly more tangentially related than most of the rest of you. So my memory of when you moved to Kansas City is vague, but I do remember spending some time with all you kids. And I know, Michael, you were always a little bit older. I remember that. I knew the younger four a little bit better. One of my earliest memories, I think, was when you first moved to Kansas City, and I think you had injured yourself somehow. You fell or something like that, and I just remember all of us kind of had to be rushed away so that could be taken care of, and we went somewhere else to keep ourselves busy. I don't remember much else other than that in that earliest memory, but I do also know that my dad inherited the frugal gene, and what happened upon relatives, your parents were no exception, and the hospitality was maybe a little expected. So whatever offenses, I apologize. But that was a little bit of my dad's frugal nature. But family, your parents were always extremely hospitable. My mom had a special relationship with your mother as well. Over the years, I know distance and things happened. When we moved to Missouri, our lives just kind of took a crazy turn, and there was, I suppose, more of a time separation in that regard. But always hospitable. Anytime we happened through Olathe, Overland Park, Kansas area. So I very much appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's see if there's anyone else waving their hand. I don't see any hands up in the participants tab.
There's someone waving.
Okay, so, okay, let me find you here. Okay, Mary, you're unmuted. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I don't remember a whole lot growing up. I do remember about the time when y'all moved to the Kansas City area. There's broken pieces, like I remember your dad being in what was the machine shop where they had the grinders there on the farm in Beatrice. And then I remember all the family get-togethers where we'd all gather for the big meal, and the younger kids would be in another room where we'd have our meals, and the adults would get together and have their conversations. And I remember him coming to the farm, and Christine and I would get together. And then also afterwards, then later on when he was coming up and dealing with Darrow with the trust and everything, I didn't have the best computer skills, and I still haven't gotten very good at that either to this day, but he was showing me how to use the USB, and I still don't understand fully how that works. And I pester my sister Connie a lot about different things on the computer, and I know she's extremely busy, but your dad was always very kind and gentle.
All
and
right. Oh, go ahead.
And well, that's basically it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so anybody? Okay, Steven is raising his hand. He's waving. Hold on, let me see if I can find you. You should be, oop.
Okay, yeah, I'm adding complication because my headset has a mute button, Zoom has a mute button, Michael has a Zoom mute button, so all of them have to be unmuted. You have another, I guess, little testament to my dad's prowess as a handyman. I've heard some stories earlier about working on vehicles and whatnot. I thought, sort of as a tribute to my dad, that when I was fortunate enough to be up in Kansas City earlier this year working from home for a while, my dad started to not do so well, and I was able to and stay until he passed. I thought of just taking a walk through of the house with the video and just highlighting some things that he worked on, but I realized it would be basically everything in the house. So if you see Michael's view, he's in the upstairs in the living room. Behind him to his right is some wall paneling. Well, my dad put that up, and you can see the edge of a picture frame next to that. Well, my dad made that picture frame. It's, if I remember right, it's not macrame, but is it needle stitch that my mom made? So mom made the picture and dad made the picture frame. So I think that, I'm guessing that was more of it was a combination of enjoying working on the project and enjoying saving money, because if you go to the picture frame store, a nice looking frame would be pretty expensive. So I got to solve two problems at the same time. Mom worked on quilts, quite a few quilts and other sewing projects over the years. And for quilts, my dad made the quilt frame for my mom to work on. I think he had remember they had a wooden one, and later maybe made another one out of PVC. That takes me off on a little tangent, I guess, when I say the word PVC. Another influence of my dad on me. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I had elbow surgery for some nerve entrapment. You've probably heard of carpal tunnel syndrome. That's a famous condition where your nerves are trapped in your wrist. Well, I had cubital tunnel syndrome. That's where the nerve is entrapped in your elbow. So I won't go into the finer points of the surgery, but after the surgery, my surgeon said that I needed to keep my elbow elevated above my heart for 4 weeks. And something I learned from my dad is, if there's a better, easier way to do it, do it. Do it smarter, not harder, if you have the opportunity. So I went to Home Depot and bought a lot of PVC fittings and pipes and whatnot. And so basically what I came up with was a piece of PVC onto the soft cast that I had at my elbow, and then a short piece of PVC pipe going down to my waist, where I had another Velcro belt connected to some more PVC, and the pieces would all interconnect. And so I didn't have to hold my arm up. I could just rest it there. All right, well, that wasn't all of the design. At work, I had to have my arm up while I was typing one-handed with my other hand, and I didn't want to hold it up all day at work, but the previous belt arrangement didn't work when I was sitting in a chair at work with an armrest. So I made another fitting of PVC that clamped onto the armrest of my chair, and then another piece of PVC pipe that fit onto the same fitting of my elbow. So I had a portable arrangement when I wasn't in my chair, and then a more permanent arrangement when I was in my chair. And the other guys at work looked and said, "Steve, that's so cool. You should sell that on eBay." And I thought, well, once I show the picture on eBay, people will say, well, I can just go to Home Depot and make that myself. But anyways, that's an easy example of something I just picked up just from being around my dad. But anyways, back to the house. Visually walking around in the basement, and in the room where my dad spent most of his last few months, in what we call the recreation room, well, there was, along one whole wall, there are some built-in shelves that I remember my dad making when I was a little kid. Shelves for books, and then covered shelves. I remember each of us kids had our own shelf: Michael's, Christine's, Becky's, Mark's, but I think there weren't enough shelves to go around, so I had to share mine with Mark. We two youngest. So that's your half, that's my half. Don't put your things on my half. I won't mess with your side, you don't mess with mine. And then below that, I guess we had the bottom shelf in that covered cabinet must have been for board games, which we played. And then another section for the TV, and then another section closed by doors. You open it up, and there's a fold-down table that you could use and work on. So that whole wall was built-in cabinet. the other two walls in that room were paneling that my dad put up. Now there's a drop-in ceiling. Well, my dad told a story when he bought the drop-in panel ceiling, you know, the kind with the metal channels, and then the acoustic panel lays inside. He said, well, if I followed their instructions, it wouldn't have worked because I have to put the light fixture here in the room between these studs and between these joists. And if I followed their instructions, it wouldn't work with the light. So I had to figure it out myself, start from the light and move out from there. And anyways, so it's just another typical story from my dad. Above that ceiling was copper plumbing. So my dad replaced all of the plumbing in the house with copper pipes that he sweated himself, to replace the steel pipe we had when I was a kid. And even going back further, when I was a kid, I remember there was a standpipe for the house drain in the basement. And the big pipe from the upstairs bathroom came into it, and another slanty pipe came from another part of the upstairs bathroom. Well, there was this huge pipe that's overhead there in the basement, and he had to change something in the joint. Well, I remember my dad coming home with a ladle, or a little pot of molten lead from work, and he had molten lead there in the basement, and he had a ladle, and he was somehow pouring this into the joint of this pipe. I was so amazed. Of course, nowadays you don't use lead anymore. But anyways, along that wall in the basement, Dad put paneling all along that wall, and shelving to put up my mom's antique decorations. Could just go on and on and on. So anyways, that my dad often said, well, he says it's not obvious that this house, the walls aren't exactly square. You find that out when you try to put paneling up instead of the plaster that was up there already. But Dad figured out how to make it look good anyways. And one last fond memory. Upstairs in our house, there were a couple of arches that separated the kitchen from the dining area from the living room area. And one by one, those walls with the arches came down. Mom and Dad worked on those together. And then in the front hall, by the front door of the house, I remember they were taking off the plaster and eventually put some other wall covering up. And I remember both my mom and dad were in there with hammer and chisel, chiseling out, I guess must have been taking out the lath with the plaster in the wall. And they were both banging on different parts of the wall. And it was mildly amusing, I guess. They were each banging, and suddenly it made the sound of chitty chitty bang bang, which was a popular movie when I was a kid. So Dad stopped and said, chitty chitty bang bang. Then they went back to worth banging. Anyways, that's kind of a fond memory of mine when I was a kid. Anyways, okay, back to you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Stephen. So let me look to see if anyone else. I don't see any hands waving around. Don't see any hands raised in the participants tab. So going once, going twice. Okay, I think we're going to end the meeting here. Again, I'll be I'll be playing the slideshow of pictures, and you can stick around and watch that if you didn't see them on the front, and they're or if you missed part of it, because it'll be the same sequence. They're in roughly chronological order. So thank you all for coming. Bye.
you.